Okay, the next speaker is Dr. Benjamin Peraka. Okay, thank you. Apologies to those who were present at Khajuraho. This is more or less a repetition of the talk I gave there on enhanced recovery programs. I'm not used to this Mac where I'm not seeing what's up on screen. But anyway, I've been asked to speak on fast-track protocols after colorectal surgery. From now on, I will refer to it as an enhanced recovery after surgery program or an ERAS program. That's now become the most popular name because fast track seems to suggest that you are tracking patients quickly and trying to throw them out. Rather than that, you are trying to enhance their recovery and getting them into a better state, fit enough for discharge sooner than with conventional treatment. So what is it? There are about 17 management interventions. It's multimodal, and you'll see in the course of my talk that various people are involved in the management of such patients to enhance their recovery. The idea is to attenuate the stress of surgery, and over the years, many interventions have been introduced to bring about this rapid recovery. The beautiful thing about ERAS is that it's evidence-based, and this is meant to be an evidence-based talk, and I will show you some evidence about this. It's comprehensive, looks at all aspects of the patient's journey in the hospital. For the administrators, it's good because it reduces care time, nursing staff have to work less, and it amazingly reduces post-op complications even up to 50%. If you're looking for evidence, and this is for the youngsters in the audience, I would suggest you look at this one topic, one paper, that although it is not about ERAS in colorectal surgery as a whole, it's more about pelvic and rectal surgery. It has all the references you need to prove each point in the ERAS protocol. ERAS, as I've mentioned, is multimodal. There are numerous interventions that you do, and as you can see, they start preoperatively. There are intraoperative interventions, and there are postoperative interventions. Some of these post-op interventions may sound like blasphemy to the senior members in the audience, but once you've seen this system working, you will believe in it. So what are the key components? I cannot go through them all and just go through some of them. It all starts with pre-op counseling, where you talk to the patient. If you can't talk, and often doctors can't do this detailed kind of talking, you need nurses who can do this. And so you need a team, you need stoma nurses or a colorectal nurse, specialist nurse, who understands the whole concept and can explain this to the patients. The benefit of pre-op counseling is that patients feel that they are in charge of their own destiny and that they will then make a difference in their own recovery. So this counseling starts at the first visit, is reinforced at subsequent visits, and then things like the operation itself are discussed, what they need to do post-op are discussed, and what they need to do before the operation are discussed. Pre-op nutrition has been shown to be extremely useful, and we advise our patients to go on high-protein supplements before they come back for their operation. Iron tablets to build up the hemoglobin, and it's amazing to see how the albumin level rises from below 3 to about 4 or 4.5. Other interventions that are controversial or difficult to accept are avoidance of pre-op fasting. This depends really on your anesthetic team. Pre-op fasting has been shown to be unnecessary, and patients can actually drink up to a few hours before the operation. And that leads us on to the next intervention, which is carbohydrate loading. Literature on this has now emerged to show that carbohydrate loading does protect against protein breakdown. It increases muscle strength, or it decreases the rate of muscle strength decline post-op, and it also decreases insulin resistance. And so patients are given a high-calorie drink just a few 4 hours before their operation. I'll talk a little bit about bowel prep because, again, this is controversial. Bowel prep, for rectal cancer surgery, it's still an open question. Most workers would give bowel prep for a patient who's going to have a low rectal anastomosis. Otherwise, for colonic surgery, it has been shown that there is no need for bowel prep, and no bowel prep is part of the ERAS protocol. The evidence for that, and there is a recommendation grade that for colonic surgery, no mechanical bowel prep. For pelvic surgery, if you're planning on a diverting ileostomy, it would be prudent to give bowel prep, because if you haven't given bowel prep, a diverting ileostomy doesn't make sense. The right colon is full of stool. And it also says that this is still an unexplored area. The evidence level for not using bowel prep for high anterior resections or colonic resections is high, but the evidence level for rectal cancer surgery is low. Anyway, the recommendation is, as I've already said, is no bowel prep for colonic surgery or high anterior resection, and maybe bowel prep for low anterior resections. Other components, antibiotic prophylaxis, thromboprophylaxis, no pre-medication, I won't go through. This has now become standard of care. Intra-op, what happens, and this really depends on your anesthetist, and there are lots of different mechanisms that have been brought in to decrease the stress of surgery, to decrease or increase the rate of post-op recovery, and some of them are outlined there. Some are not available to us yet, but most people now agree that a thoracic epidural does help with post-op analgesia, intra-op handling of bowel, though there is some doubt as to whether there is an increase in the anastomotic leak rates when epidurals are used. High inspired oxygen has been shown to reduce wound infection rates. Probably the biggest change is how IV fluids are given in this ERAS protocol. The tendency to give too much IV fluid has now to be resisted, and the fluid should be goal directed depending on what is required. And the best way to assess that is with a transesophageal Doppler, which is available in India but has not found general acceptance. There are measures that the anesthetist can use to reduce post-op nausea and vomiting, and normothermia, I cannot overemphasize how important it is to prevent wound infection and to hasten recovery. I've already talked about giving too much IV fluid, which all of us tend to do. In the post-op period, things that help in the recovery or making patients more comfortable is to avoid the use of an NG tube. There's enough literature out there to prove that. Not using drains, again there is literature out there to show that drains do not prevent a leak, drains do not help in early detection of a leak, and therefore are probably not necessary. In our practice, we do not routinely use drains or NG tubes in the post-op period, even after colonic and rectal resections. Again, there's enough evidence about early feeding being helpful for patients, and in our practice, we feed the patients the same day of the operation. Catheters can be removed early, even if a patient has an epidural, even if you've done an APE and you're sure that you've preserved the nerves. The old adage of wait for 2 weeks is not necessary, and we now routinely remove catheters at 3 to 5 days after an APE, much earlier for patients who've had colonic resections. A lot of evidence for early mobilization and ambulation, and the benefit is that the patient actually feels better once he's up and about, and amazingly pain is less if the patient actually moves. We avoid opioid analgesia in the post-op period and stress on the use of NSAIDs and paracetamol. There are newer interventions being tried out, like IV lignocaine. Continuous wound infiltration is now standard of care in many places. We use the same with an epidural cannula inside the wound. TAP blocks, if your anesthetist is familiar with it. Gut stimulants are used as part of an ERAS program where patients are given laxatives to hasten bowel recovery, or use drugs that, like albumopan, that are mu receptor antagonists. At the end of all this, you need to look at your results, and I will show you some evidence to show that it works from our own experience. One must remember that patients are being sent home earlier than before. They can still have complications, and therefore they should be allowed to come back right to see you directly, not go through a casualty which will send them somewhere else. They should be able to call you and come back straight to your ward where they can be readmitted if necessary. It doesn't work in all patients. There is a 10% failure rate. You need to be aware of that. And ileus often sets in not immediately after the operation, but at about 72 hours, around the time that patients may look well and be able to be discharged. And therefore, you need to be sensible about the whole protocol. Just some data from our rectal resections in the last 1 year when this program was introduced. We've done 71 resections. In an uncomplicated case, the mean post-op stay is 4.79 days. Overall, for all the patients, it's about 6 days. Just to show that it works, in an uncomplicated case where the patient has no post-op complications, there is a significant decrease in the hospital stay when the data is compared with the pre-ERAS era about 2 years ago. If there is a complication, the stays sort of equalize and there is no significant difference, which is obvious and understandable. Is there a difference in the complications that happen because of the ERAS program? No drain, no NG tube, no catheter, what the hell are you guys doing? The evidence is out there. Again, this is from the same cohort where you can see none of the p-values are significant when it comes to readmissions, reoperations, leaks, ileus, and all the other complications that I've mentioned. So it works, you have to see it to believe it, and it works in India. And we have done it, and I think that surgeons who have small practices can actually implement this much easier than people like us who have big institutions who have to contend with a lot of machinery. So to conclude, it's evidence-based, it works, can be implemented, and actually all it needs is a mindset change in us first of all, and then you can convince your anesthetists, nurses, and all the others in your team to introduce this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Benjamin.